happy to have each of these lovely ladies with us today. And it's all about composition. And I think when we look at art, most of the time we're not dissecting it and taking about piece by piece, but we're really looking at light, color, and composition. The sort of the trifecta, there's lots of other nuances too, but composition is really about how you use the space and how you place your objects on the canvas, for a simple description. But so we're going to talk about that, and it's way more complicated than that. But I always like to start with a little bit of background of, tell us, I'm going to start with you, Barbara, how long you've been painting and why you love what you do in the world of realism there.
Is this working? Okay, can you hear me? Gosh, I've been painting for many years. Didn't really start realism with the birds probably until maybe 12, 13 years ago. Been with the show now 18 years. And I forget the other question. I was running up with it.
Well, we might go into the birds later, but you might have noticed that we used your image for the image to promote the topic today, because I love the composition of all that, and we'll dive into that a little bit deeper. But I want to make sure we talk about your baseballs and your birds and so forth. So next to her, Marie, tell us how long. Tell us a little bit more about you. How long you've been painting and what made you join the Celebration of Fine Art?
Oh boy. I've been painting.
Closer.
I've been painting since '93 as an oil painter. I was a sign artist and a gilder in the 80s and 90s, and then I drifted over into this.
A gilder.
Yeah, a gilder. What was the other question?
Well, that's good. That's good. We'll get back to you.
Oh boy.
She's a little nervous, but she's going to be from here. So, but isn't she great? She doesn't make me scared. Let's hear it. Yeah. Thanks, Zoe. It's a friendly crowd. Okay, so Miss Leslie, how long have you been painting?
I mean, I've been painting for a long time, but full-time since 2016. And then before that, I was an illustrator and a graphic designer and hated it. So, and I just wanted to paint. So I moved over to that. And then this is my 6th year here. You can believe it.
So I think I remember a story about your graphic design career and then how you go home at night and paint. And so let's talk about that, because that's really where your passion was. You had the fine art graphic design degree, but
yeah, I had studied illustration and graphic design in school, thinking that was the more would be how I could make a living. But then when I started, it just felt like such a day job. I just hated it. And even when, I worked for a company that was really great, but I just didn't like it. And so I would go home at night, and I had a little shed in the backyard that had AC and heat. And so I would just go back there and set up a tiny little still life, like maybe a couple of tomatoes or an onion or a couple of pears, and I would paint it. And so I started, I gave myself a personal project to just paint 30 paintings in 30 days. So I did one every day, and they were small. They were only like 5 by 7, but for me it was just to figure out how I wanted my paint to look, and it gave me this. It really helped me figure out that I loved still life, and that there are really interesting ways to set up my still lifes. And so I just became a passion. I never thought that I'd want to paint still life, but that's what I do, and I just love it.
it's almost like you get to be an artist twice. Once with the pieces.
Yeah.
Choosing the flowers, choosing the fruit.
Because I paint from life. Here it's a little bit trickier because usually my still lifes are taking up, a good table like this, and I gather my subject matter and way too many flowers and go to the grocery store and get way too much produce, and then I set it all up and end up using only like an eighth of it and then get to take home the rest. But it's fun. I'm setting things up and taking a look at it and really thinking about how I'm going to be setting things up on taking it from my table to my painting and trying to envision what my painting is going to look like.
There was one incident one year where we had some nighttime visitors, the javelinas, and they ate her display.
Yeah, I had a bunch of, I think it was my second year, and I didn't know that javelinas would come in. I don't know. I'm a Utah girl. I didn't know things like that existed. So then I did a video like at 1 a.m. from Santiago, my neighbor, and it's these big javelinas that had snuck in, and they were eating all of the apples and running through the tent, and
They like art too. You know, we gotta spread the culture. The other thing is they ate somebody's Fig Newton, so they like fresh fruit, but they're not opposed to processed food. So, but I'm sure they were attracted to your paintings as well. And I always think it's delicacy when I look at yours. And we'll come back and talk a little bit more about this specific one behind us. But the thing with composition, for me, I often will first think of still lifes because you are composing by placing the items that you're going to paint. But composition is all about, again, how it fills up the canvas. And Marie is, you really have to look at her work. It's magnificent when you start to realize what's going on in this particular piece here. It's a storefront with what's inside of it, but also the reflection of what's behind it. And the composition of that just drew me in, and I was astounded by it. Like you're painting backwards almost. But tell us a little bit about like what drew you to that and how complicated was that?
It wasn't really very complicated. I work from photographs, and I take a series of photographs. Oh, closer, sorry. I take a series of photographs. Sometimes I have to use a lot of photographs to compose one picture, but I got lucky with this one, and I had some good shots. I have a dressmaker background, and I love clothes, and what I thought was interesting, this is the window shopper series, and there's shop windows are these fantasy places, you know, where you can picture yourself in the clothes, but you can buy them and then step outside into the real world in your new duds where this reflection is. So, and this piece, this shop had big awnings that hung over. So here is where the shadow ended. So you could really see the clothes, but then you could see the street across the street reflected in it.
So that's really the difference of here we see the storefront because there's no reflection.
And then down
here,
there.
yeah.
So that's what I was trying to convey. And I just got lucky that day, and the light was right, and I got some good photographs I could work from. So I've never done any still lifes where you set things up. That's like magic.
Well, I think you're magic. So do you think that the dressmaker background influences what you do today in your painting?
Yeah. I paint a lot of clothes. I paint other things too, but yeah, it's a creative process. You're putting things together and you're designing, and yeah.
So I always like to say it's so fun to see the world through the eyes of an artist, because a lot of us might walk right by a storefront and not see the work of art that really is. And you've captured it so beautifully that we're getting a introduction to the space as well as to the story behind the glass. So I love that. And I'm going to have you talk about your bicycle tires in a little bit. But okay, so Barbara, you have two pieces behind you, one of which, again, we used to promote the topic of composition. And the other one, I think there's some big story behind that. So tell us why composition matters to you.
Yeah, and these two, they fit into my theme where I usually have a bird in my paintings, but they're very different. And this one's called Flight of the Feathers. It's a more contemporary painting. In this painting, I really had fun with the composition. I tried to pay attention a little bit to the rule of thirds and the way you divide your canvas, but I kept it very simple. And the little hummingbirds are very territorial. So in this one, he's in charge of all these feathers from the very large birds. I've got owl feathers, blue jay, peacock, turkey, Cooper's hawk. You know, it's just really fun to just place them and then kind of I didn't want to divide my canvas in half in the composition, but I wanted to create some interest. So I used this band of very textured paint here that I did to pick up some of the colors, but I wanted to keep this focal point kind of on that little hummingbird and what he's doing. And if I had turned the hummingbird in the other direction, I don't think it would have worked. He would have been moving out of the composition. So there's kind of, I mean, almost every day I get questions. People will walk right up to this painting, they'll ask me what it really means, and really it's just kind of a fun play on the hummingbird, a simple composition. Where the other one, the baseball, is a little tighter, but I kind of have created a little story with almost like a triangle. The baseball mitts, the baseball, the little chickadee is kind of important in that one. Even though he's looking out, I think in this case it worked for me. I might be breaking some of the rules of composition, but I think that's the fun of painting. It creates a curiosity, I think. But the birds, I think they relate to one another, even though this is more traditional, this would be more contemporary. But it still has my realism aspects. And they're both fun and they both have a story. I think telling a story is like the key in my work.
So you brought up the rule of thirds, and I would love, and I'm sure our audience members would, for you to expand a little bit more on what that's about.
So if you have a canvas and you were to break it, like draw a line here, and draw a line here, and then a line here, and a line here, and kind of visualize those lines. If you place your main focal point of interest in one of those intersecting lines, it creates more drama. If you, instead of putting like something right smack dab in the center, it might be a little less interesting. So it's really important to kind of, that rule of thirds, the way it's divided and where it intersects, those lines will help you, whether it's a landscape or a still life. I don't know if that makes sense, but if you have a question about it, yeah, I can tell you what I think, and I know you guys can probably, do you work that way too? You probably explain it very well.
I was going to ask, have any of you ever like done a drawing and you only have like the middle of the paper, or maybe it was your child, but or if it was me, you know, here's a big piece of paper and there's a thing. Well, that's not composition. What you're talking about is composition and how to move your eye across the canvas, across the paper.
Yeah, you want your eye to flow through too. You don't want it just to go right off the edge. You want to kind of keep your focus, but then bring your eye back around. You don't want it to go off and get lost, you know, in your story.
And like you said, if the hummingbird was facing the other direction, he's done with all that. He's moving on. So he is actively engaged in what's happening on the other side of that canvas. So Leslie, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I think we've talked about thirds.
Yeah, I use the rule of thirds all the time. It is my go-to, and partially because I have a low attention span. So it's very helpful to have a very simple plan in place, and rule of thirds is simple enough for my brain to stick to. So I always, I'll tone my canvas and then I divide it up into 3, and I get a big ruler, and I draw a line, 2 lines to divide it up horizontally and 2 to line it up vertically, and then I just start painting. And I like to think of it as when I'm painting, I think a lot about space and about weight. So in my painting, I am trying to create a sense of peace in most of my work. And so I find that having more open space just almost feels like a breath of fresh air, you know, and I'm trying to also make it so that it feels light. So even if I have a full canvas and maybe something that's really bright right here, or I'm trying to, with the empty space and with how I weigh things, so like over here might be a little bit heavier visually, then this area over here is a little bit lighter, and it allows someone's eye to kind of circle through. And I do that a lot with colors as well. Like you'll notice that I have my blood oranges here, so I use 3 a lot. So I have 3 right here that kind of help lead your eye. I have my avocados here, and then I have my yellow over here. So as I'm setting things up, I'm always thinking about that, like how is it fitting into space, and how are my colors and my shapes going to influence where the viewer is looking. And like Barbara said, not letting the people that are looking at it to lose interest and fall off the page or want to just move off. Instead, just have them float through.
And none of us really recognize that when we're looking at it. We just see the composed picture or photo or painting. I know what this is.
Art.
It's a painting. It's a composed art. And I actually love how, even though you don't have any objects down in this bottom area, it's got its own weight and own presence. And you want to look at all of that as well. So I think that's magnificent. And you do work primarily, you have birds, feathers, flowers, fruit, watermelon. I mean, you
Yeah, I love going grocery shopping, and I love farmers markets. So I think it's fun to just take all of that in and build something that I'm interested in. And I try not to think too much about what people will like, because you know some people, like with this painting, say, "Oh, there are avocados there, interesting." And to me, it's kind of like, "Oh, they were gorgeous." When I cut them open, my toddler loves avocado. So really, I was setting this up, and then it was lunchtime. So then I opened an avocado for him and said, "Oh, that one's perfect. We'll set that aside, and you can have this one." And then took it back to the room and put it in my still life. And it's just part of life. And I like that they almost tell a story of where I am in the moment too. So with my toddler, and I found that my 2020 paintings, interestingly, have been more colorful, much more vibrant. And I didn't realize that until coming here. And I think it's just, you know, you paint what you need at the time.
creating the vibrancy and the light. I think we all needed that over the last year, right? Woo! Yeah, thank you for bringing beautiful things to us to enjoy. Okay, so this other piece that I brought over, I'm going to hold it up. Kind of hiding over here. I love this, and you have several pieces that are along this sort of lines. You have a lot of like signage, vintage signage. But this piece I really love because we're getting the very up close of the bike tire, and it's showing us what's behind there with the bicycle. So talk about this a little bit.
It was kind of a happy accident.
Good. We like those.
I really liked the graphics on that tire, and I was a sign painter. So that's what drew me to it. So I'm laying on the ground out in front of this bike shop, taking these pictures
Hold this closer.
of the tire, and oops,
Did it go off? Oh.
I realized there were all these bicycles in the background. So that's how it happened. It was unplanned.
So
But
you're
it's
laying on the ground taking photographs.
Yes.
Whatever it takes to get the shot, right?
Yeah, so there was probably 25 photographs that I took just trying to get a good composition, and that's how that one happened.
And you are absolutely drawn to words and
Yeah.
signage, and you'll notice when you see her studio that many of her pieces have a nod to that, or car sign, car.
Yeah, the cars have logos and words, and it's the written word is everywhere and everything in modern culture. But I like chopping it off so that you don't know what it says. It's except in handmade in Germany.
Yeah. But we finish the sentence or finish the word ourselves based on what
Yes.
we see.
Yeah, based on what we see.
And I love the way you have a trio of pool balls.
They're gone.
Oh, she had a trio. What was it called?
Round numbers.
Yeah. So
But it
clever.
was just because the numbers are encapsulated in a little round white circle within the color of the ball. So that was that.
Well, some smart persons grabbed those. So, but again, you're even if it's just one object like that, you're still composing so that they're not just right in the middle of that little. They're like 6x6 or 8x8.
I think those were 4x4s.
4x4 smaller.
Yeah, they had a lot of nice shadows and reflections, and I like shiny stuff. Shiny glass, shiny metal, shiny satin, silk.
So that's where you get the folds and the fabrics and
Mhm.
everything.
I like the contrast and the dimension that those things create.
And what each of you also use very beautifully is lights and shadow, light and shadow and color. But even within the composition, we can see the light side and the dark side. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Barbara?
Yeah, I think light, shadow, color, all of that plays into your composition. It's really important. Even if you're just doing a really simplistic painting or something very detailed. Of course, the baseball painting is very detailed, but I think what brings it out is those shadows behind the gloves. Another artist here, I have to mention Kathy Sheeter, the sketchboard artist. She did something really amazing, I thought, in her shadows. And she'll do like maybe a bird, and it might be on a certain type of a plant, but then she exaggerated the shadow. And you should see her work. It's in the front corner over here. It's really amazing. But I love that play in a composition. The shadow can become part of the story. You don't know at first when you're looking at it that it's not probably an accurate shadow, but it creates this wonderful drama. And you can do the same thing with light. I think the way your eye will just bounce around from subtle highlights in a painting, even maybe not looking at the darkest darks. It's just what our eyes do. And I think if you lay your focal point out and composition right, you pay attention to the lights and the darks. It helps create a really beautiful painting, and it can be successful just for being even an abstract, just because of the way you utilize your lights and your darks.
Absolutely. Well, I think the piece of Kathy's that you were talking about, although she had several with the shadows, but we talked about it in another discovery. She painted, scratchboarded a bunny, a jackrabbit, who was standing next to a acatillo or some cactus, and the shadow it cast was like antelope antlers, and it was called jackalope. So the bunny didn't really have antlers, but it sure looked like it in the shadow. But that lasted like a day before somebody grabbed that one. But it's fun. So really, they go hand in hand, the color, composition, lighting. But again, if it's not composed properly, you're not going to convey the message that you want to convey, or deliver the feeling of being part of the painting. How long did it take you, Barbara, to really work through composition? I mean, did you go to school? Did you just kind of learn as you went?
Well, I did get my fine arts degree a long time ago. And then I was a graphic designer. And, you know, so you learn a lot of little things, but not really painting. I don't think I really learned about painting. I got a job after college for a publishing company, and I was painting whatever was in style. If it was figures, I did figures. If it was florals, I was doing florals, because that's how we had to make a living. But I think through doing those things that were uncomfortable for me, I learned a lot of tricks of the trade. Another thing is just being among, even here, with working with other artists and painting with other artists, you develop skills just from practice and trying new methods. And it just really took off for me, I think. Somewhere along the line, I started doing what I really loved and practicing. I mean, I started with watercolor and I went to acrylic, which I love both of those. But when I got to the oils, there was something about it for me that I just really enjoyed and tried to, you know, refine my craft, I guess, with oil.
So another part of composing an overall message is choosing the frame. And I noticed, like with your baseball piece, you got a larger in proportion frame than you do to the one next to you. What goes into deciding a real streamlined floating frame or a more?
With the contemporary paintings, a real simple floater frame works. And a lot of the artists here are telling me that I should simplify my frames. I still love the heavy wood ones with the sports paintings. People seem to really love them, but it just, I like the color tones, I guess, with the natural wood when I'm doing the sports paintings, especially because of those deep, rich browns. I think it looks really nice. But with a contemporary painting like this, it just wouldn't work, I don't think. So you gotta keep it real simple.
Most challenging commission you've ever done?
Well, I think it's gonna happen in about 2 weeks. I had a couple come through a couple times yesterday, and it's not written up yet, but it will be. I have to go out to their house, and she's a writer, and she loves my book paintings. So, and she's about to have her 15th book published. And she's a poet. So she's, I don't know about birds, though. I said, I have a bird, but we're gonna pick some antiques that are important. To her and her family, and I'm gonna have all of her books in there and a few of her favorite things. And then she threw in, can you paint me as well in the background? And I said, I probably could, but let's talk about, you know, the composition first, because it could get too busy in a composition where it's not gonna work. And she wants this to be a family heirloom. So I've had some challenges like that before, but usually it's something I love to do. So this one really appeals to me. I'm excited about it. And they came back again and said, we also have a home in Washington and they want you to maybe do a second one. So I think it'll be a fun challenge. I'm really looking forward to it, but it'll be time consuming.
But that's really, I mean, I know you've done many commissions, and that's really a journey that you take with your collector to discover them, who they are, what has value to them. You've worked with people's
yeah, people have come to the show. I don't see them here, but they are from out of state, but they come down here, and she wanted a gift for her husband. And so she snuck out of her house his favorite baseball gloves, books, jersey, things that he had, and she shipped them to me. And I did a photo shoot at home with the right lighting and things, get the shadows and everything just right. And then I had to wrap them up and have them back to Tahoe in like 2 days. And then she put everything back in the den, and he never knew. And then when their anniversary, birthday, whatever it was, I think it was a birthday party, she presented him with this painting. And, you know, his nickname is Hawk, so it had to be a hawk in it and all of these different things. But they really loved it, and that made me feel really good. But it's fun. I can make it work even if it's a surprise.
Yeah, there are some very sneaky people around here. Every day, something like, oh, my husband has this BMW and I want it painted. This was today, so they're not. I know what he's getting for his anniversary. So that's really fun, and you can take people's keepsakes and turn them into a permanent heirloom that the generations can enjoy. And again, I know you have fun with it, and I have, every time the challenge is big, the reward is bigger, right? It is, yeah. How about you, Marie? Have you done commission work yet?
Yes.
Yes.
I got this commission to do. It was like 16 inches by 20, and it was a photograph of the guy that commissioned it. It was of his father, and he had owned a gas station. So he's in front of his gas station.
That one's better.
He was in front of his gas station. There's a Nash Rambler in the bay up above, so it's kind of in the shadows. And then it was at Christmas time, so there were all these Christmas windows painted on the front of the station. It was all tiny. And it was his father's head was like as big as a quarter.
Yeah, that would have been better, like a 36 by 60.
Yeah, it would have been great. But I thought, okay, I can do this. So, and he only had room for a small painting, so that's what, but it had all these tiny little elements in it to do. And the gas pumps, and he was in a uniform, and buckets of oil, and all these little things. But it was really fun. It was really fun to do. And it was nice because his dad had passed away 4 years before, and he hadn't seen this picture for probably 35 years. Another family member had it in some old slides, and we happened to see it. So that was really a nice, but it was hard. Oh my gosh.
Kept you up at night, probably.
Yes.
Let's see, what about you? Do you do many commissions or?
Yeah, I do a lot. And I think one of my favorites that I've done so far was I did this big triptych for a couple for their anniversary. And there's a lake in Utah that is really special to them. And there are pelicans that come through there every year. And so they wanted, and pelicans are great because they're really cool birds, and they mate for life. And so they wanted a bunch of pelicans in there. So, and I happened to live very close to the lake. So I went out and took photos, and I had my 2 dogs with me, and I drove out onto the lake a little bit too far and totally got stuck in the mud. so the guy had to like get home and get his truck and tow me out. And anyway, so that was exciting, but yeah. And then got a bunch of, there's a great aviary in Salt Lake. So I went there and they have a bunch of pelicans. So got my reference, and it was a little bit of I said I usually do still life. So for me, it was a little bit of a really challenging painting, because even though I do birds, I don't really do landscapes very often. And they just wanted a background that was really abstract, kind of like my abstract backgrounds, and really have it be more about the feel of the lake. And anyway, so it was an intimidating commission. It was also very big. And so it was wonderful. Like I connected really. It's always nice when you connect with the people that you're doing the commission for, and they become good friends. And anyway, it ended up being lovely. And I still get a text from her every once in a while, and she'll say, "Oh, I'm laying on my bed, and here's the painting, and I'm just so happy with it." And I think that is, no matter if it's a commission or if it's a big painting or if it's a little painting, just knowing that someone really connects to something is such a treat as an artist, because I don't know, it's something that is part of your soul that you're putting out there, and then to have someone that brings it into their home, it's just really thrilling.
I'm glad they did one a little. I'm glad they did one. Oh, you know what?
Please turn off some. I'm glad they didn't want a tiny one because pelicans are not very small birds.
No, they're big.
Yeah. So,
That would get hard to
too small.
Um,
So again,
when I think of
your paint
and Barbara a little bit
too, I think of sort of a delicate, but Barbara, you also can be, really masculine, but your technique, I think, is another thing I'd love to kind of pull in here a little bit, is
what
do you use brushes, palette knives,
I
scrapers?
use all of those things and more. Anything, and I'll use my hands, I'll use paper towels. I get big brushes from like the brushes that you use for sheetrock from Home Depot, and I'll use those if it's a really big painting. But really, I'm just trying to get whatever that I need to get that look is what I'll use. But I like things to feel really soft. It took me a while to embrace that because I didn't want it to be seen as cheesy or hokey, but it's just what I like. And so once I embraced it, I feel like it started to, well, I'm happy with what I do, so it's a nice feeling. And then I like to throw in a few kind of harder edges, but it's simple, like a line here, a crisp line there. I think there's something nice about it being soft and almost ethereal.
Are you consciously, I know you each do the third, once you've done that, are you consciously placing things, or do you just sort of know instinctively where you're going?
Oh, it's conscious for sure. And I've had too many times where I have gotten maybe halfway through a painting and the whole time I just think, oh my gosh, this is in the wrong spot, this is in the wrong spot, this is in the wrong spot, but I painted it perfectly, but then I end up hating it, so I scrape it off. So now a mantra that I have is that nothing is sacred, and if I do it once, I can do it again. And so I'm not shy about just scraping it off if I need to. Because the composition is so essential. You can paint something perfectly, and if it's in the wrong spot, then it feels a little off, and it's just not nearly as strong. So learn that way, the hard way.
And again, even in the abstract piece, composition's critical.
Yeah.
Any questions as we're going through here? We always welcome questions. So, Marie, what about you? Are you a brush user or palette knives or both? Or
No, I'm a brush user, but since I've been here, I've learned all kinds of new tools.
yes,
Just like what Leslie said. What are those things they put? Trowels, strings,
yep.
paper towels, rags, palette knives. I've only used a palette knife to mix paint. Well, yeah, I've learned, but I've always been just using a brush and little makeup brushes, blend things, but
Well, I have to say, we had a topic called tools of the trade, and I thought, what was I thinking? How am I going to have a whole hour-long conversation? Well, we could have gone another hour or two talking about the variety of tools that people use around here. And from Trevor Swanson, who's got an addiction to brushes, to Jen Brains, who just throws it on with, palette knives and handy or baby wipes, so don't be afraid. If you're an artist, don't be afraid to experiment and reach out and try different things. And again, one of the great benefits of being here, not only do you have your fellow artists, but the collectors that come through. Every year we have artists that get great ideas, and especially when we're talking commissions, it pushes you to, new heights of, challenges to yourself. But don't you feel that the collectors that come in here really help to impact your work as well?
yes.
So that's why you're so important.
Especially this year, because I've always painted pretty small, really, in comparison to everybody else. And next year I'm coming back big. Everybody wants big art.
Yes.
So I'm going to try to do what I do. And I'm going to talk to Leslie about using my negative space the right way, because I love her work. But I really think, I'm going to try.
Yeah,
I'm gonna pull out some palette knives too. I'm with you, because with palette knives, sometimes it's so chunky, then you can't do your detail. So there has to be a happy medium, you know, where you can kind of like add palette knife in here in this area and use brush back here. But I can't wait to experiment. So
That's wonderful. I'm excited. Yeah, one day she said, I have a really big painting, because we have sort of a group area by the front office that we have a variety of paintings hanging. And
it
I was
doesn't
like,
look that big over there.
I was like, it's not big, but it is
I
big.
have a little car. So
Yeah. I did have one artist tell me one time, we had our artwork at the Royal Palms, and her criteria was, it has to fit in my car. I'm like, okay. But sometimes you have,
Let somebody else write.
yeah. So you had a question?
Did you speak to the camera? What kind of camera you choose to use when you do your initial photo?
Right here. I used to, what kind of camera?
I used to use before these, I had a little tiny Nikon that you could, God, it's hard to describe. You could articulate the lens around it would, and I could get these great shots of storefronts. I could stand in front and turn this lens so it would be like you were looking up at it, but I didn't have to get on the ground to do it. And that one died. But I use my cell phone, and then I severely crop things and rearrange stuff, or use 8 photos and something from each one, and yeah. And I'm not a photographer. I have no background in that. I just kind of fiddle around.
But you have the eye to see what you want to see, the composition, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's a good question, and I think we've made so many advancements have been made in technology. You know, you think about Fujifilm and Kodak fighting for shelf space, and nobody uses film anymore except for like super ultra awesome photographers. Deanna.
Barbara, I think that you and Judith should collaborate on painting next year, because she does such great portraits. You do such a great birds and backgrounds and detail. If the two of you collaborated, what a great painting.
That's a great, so
it'd be fun to
can you
meet.
kind of repeat that for the,
Well, once in a while, we do collaborate with each other. One artist that does something very different or even similar, we'll kind of do a piece together, like the Glass Guys or whoever. But Judith does beautiful portraits, gorgeous. And so you'll have to let us know what you want. We'll do it for you.
well, of course, we had the Anthony project this year with a variety of artists who all painted Anthony, the glassblower, in their own style, and it's super fun. We're gonna probably have them displayed here tomorrow, but yeah, I think that's a key thing, Deanna, that collaborations have been something that's been a big part of the celebration, and sometimes it's just like a 1 or 2 time collaboration. But the benefit to both individual artists and how you grow through those is tremendous, and then you know the viewers get to enjoy it as well. But yeah, that if you have to work that woman into the painting with all of that, and I do agree with you that it could get real crowded, right?
On the commission, you mean, I told the lady, I said, we have the beautiful little Baroque frame that Bryce Pettit sculpted. I think, why don't we put a little mini frame on the stack of books and kind of an impression of her? Because I think it would be too busy otherwise, but we'll work it out. I might have to bring one with me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, what she's talking about is our signature collector's pendant that is just beautiful. It's in Bryce's case, but you'll be seeing more of those. It's cast in silver, and we've got a variety of artists now painting little paintings to go in, so you can wear your art both in the cast silver frame and on the artwork.
Yeah, so we can all paint one, and they can buy a couple, and they can interchange it. It's like a beautiful necklace. You should check that out tonight while you're here.
Yeah, yeah. I think we showed it at one of the previous. It's a 1 1/4 by 1 1/2 inch piece of little prepared metal that Bryce has given to any artist who wants to paint. And literally, you could change your artwork that hangs around your neck every day. And it also comes with a little easel as well. So they're right down the road there. They're exquisite. So we're looking forward to kind of expanding that as one of our signature offerings here. So go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so there's no more excuses of saying we don't have any wall space.
We'll find a way to fill a wall. I was sitting at home the other day wondering how I was going to make room for a piece I really wanted, and lo and behold, it came to me, and I made it work. So there's always a way. And if you need help arranging your art, I'm very happy to come help you do that. It's my favorite thing. Put little vignettes together and make sure they all like each other, because that's an art form too. So. In fact, anyone here that is always willing to help you figure out how to incorporate a new piece into your collection. And sometimes you just have to rotate your art, like seasonally, just like the museums, right? Yeah, or if it's wearable, you can, or you rotate your clothing each season. We are here to serve you. So, who has more questions? Anybody from our viewers have any questions? Okay, right here.
Well, it's obvious that you all love what you do very much. It just shows through. But I was wondering if there are ever times where you feel frustrated or uninspired, and how you work through those times.
I'm gonna repeat that. I'm very good at that. It's obvious to you that you're all amazing. What you do. Do you ever feel frustrated? How do you work through it? Great question.
Never. Always. And sometimes every day. And it depends on the painting too. I mean, sometimes there are just ugly stretches in a painting, and that can be frustrating. Or your dog might put their paw on a painting and slide it on it. That was frustrating.
Or your cat jumps into your palette.
Or, I think an important thing for me at least is to just always try and keep my well filled. And I can tell when I haven't been doing enough to take care of myself, whether that's, going to bed on time or just having time to do things that I love, like maybe reading a good book or going outside. Sometimes I don't go outside for days. If I have projects that I'm working on, I'll go outside and be like, oh my gosh, this has been 4 days. Like, so keeping my well filled and then just working through some of the frustration, and I like to bounce around on a lot of different projects. So I'll usually have 4 or 5 paintings going on at the same time, so that if I'm dying with one painting, I can move on to another one, and there you go. Or I go and watch Netflix. That helps too.
Marie, yeah, I'm the same way. I have frustrations almost in every painting, and I just always know I can fix it, or scrape it off, or paint over the top of it, and then bouncing around between different projects really helps, because then you can work on something fresh and forget about what you're getting bogged down on. It makes a difference.
The same, there are paintings that I probably started 3 years ago that have gorgeous backgrounds, but then I lose that, excitement or something, because I start something else or something takes me away from it. So they're still kind of stacked up in the studio. So I think it's important to switch gears, get out of the house, take a walk, travel, do something, and then maybe come back with a fresh eye. That always helps.
That's a great question about life in general, but well answered, ladies. Thank you.
Right there.
How do you know when your painting's done?
Good. No, when it's done, I was wondering the same thing.
When everybody tells me to stop.
I think it's just kind of something innate. It's just a feeling. But then you can look at the painting a month later and say, oh, I need to do this. So it's a crapshoot.
Mine are usually done when I have to deliver them. So that's usually, yes. And a lot of times I will tell the person that I'm delivering them, well, it's not varnished. So I'll be back in a couple of weeks to varnish it because there are always these little things that I find, and sometimes my husband has to just come in and say, okay, it's done, put that one away. Let's go out of the house now. So
Yeah, sometimes artists say, when it's sold, then I can't touch it anymore. I've seen artists with pieces hanging on their wall, like ready, adding to. At least you can eat yours. Not the paintings.
not usually. I could show you some pretty gross photos of how those avocados turned out because they're sitting there for a few days. So it's pretty bad.
Put the flowers in a vase and.
Yeah, I do. I have a fridge that I put my flowers in. I've learned how to extend the lives of flowers for a very long time. So if you need any tips, I'm your woman. But I mean, the nice thing is that it's easy to slice another avocado and stick it in, it's all right. But there have been one time we went on a week-long vacation and I forgot to throw away some of my still life stuff, and it was so bad when we got home, and it was the summer, and it was a melon. We got home and there were so many ants, like everywhere. And I was just like, why are there all these ants? And I don't think I went into my studio for a couple of days because I was, doing laundry and whatever. And then I walked in there and was just like, oh no, like it was so bad. Just this long line of ants. Anyway, so
Like, there's a party over here.
yeah.
And you're still married, huh?
I am, yes.
Very good. So, who else has a question? Oh, yes, please.
One of the artists here in the show, when he comes to our house, we make him use brushes outside. He comes with brushes to work on his art. You know who I'm talking about.
So one of those artists, he's never done, he brings his brushes when he comes over to visit. Yeah. It's a compulsive order. I won't call it a disorder. It's just compulsive order, right? We all want to keep tweaking everything. But I love having such joyful paintings behind us that you ladies have brought, and I know sometimes, like, I love what you said earlier, Leslie, about you maybe didn't realize it during 2020 you painted brighter and lighter. You do have some darker pieces, and every one of them though has just that ethereal quality to it. But I believe that art heals, and that art really helps, take stress away and takes us to a place in time, whether it be, an abstract painting can do that. I have one I call the decomposed pond, and it's completely abstract, but it makes me feel like, it's a pond. So again, the art can take you to places and relieve your stress. And how has that helped impact you personally over this last year?
Oh my gosh, I mean, well, it's always helped me. I mean, I deal with a lot of anxiety and depression, and so for me, art really is just a therapy, and it always has been. Even I think the reason that I'm even doing this is because of my struggles with mental illness, and my dad having the foresight as when I was 13 and really struggling to put me in a weekly watercolor class. And I did that through until I went to college. And so it's just it's just something that is so needed. Yeah, it's just so needed. And for me, the colors, there's a psychology of color. And so, I don't know, it's just, it's so important. So important.
So what a blessing that it helps you and it helps the viewer.
Yeah, it's just a bonus for people that like it, because it's really for me.
Well,
and other people.
I like that selfishness because it's helping us. So that's very good. That's excellent. And thank you, Beauty, for sharing. How about you? I mean, you guys feel like you have expressed yourself through what you paint?
Yeah, and for me, I'm a really hyper, can't sit still person, and painting slows me way down and helps me just I get lost in my work, in the shapes and color and paint and just the whole process. So it's kind of zen for me. It makes a big difference. Big difference.
Yeah, I agree with that completely, because I think life is so busy, running around, everything's hectic and rushed, and people will come in and say to me, look at my art, and it's like, gosh, you have a lot of patience. And I don't really think that I do.
really don't.
But with your art, you kind of get lost, and you don't even realize you just spent 8 or 9 hours on something, and you're hungry. You need to take a break.
Well, all the more reason to use fruit in your still life.
Yeah.
But,
But
but not always either. When I say, we love the celebration of fine art because you can immerse yourself in the sights and the sounds of art being created. We had big noise right before we started, and the smell of the paint and clay and the texture. They're allowed to touch it, but please don't lick the paintings. In order to taste, you have to come to Celebration Cafe and enjoy the food over here, which we try to keep up with the art. Anyway, I'm just so grateful to have each of you share a little bit about, we always want to share some of technique and a lot of the inspiration. And I think last week we were talking about the art of bronze, and I love one of the things that Todd said was, a lot of people ask, how does that work, or how does it happen? But the biggest compliment an artist can hear is, how does it make you feel? And most of the time we kind of have learned that a lot of people that ask how you do something, a lot of times the real question is why. And I think you guys have each really helped us understand the why you do what you do, and along with some of the hows, which is great. So do we have any more questions for this amazing group of panelists here today? What did I not ask that I should have asked that you want to share? Anything? Murray's like, I don't want to do that. You've done great. Okay, Barbara, what do you want to say?
just thank you to all of you who come out here every
Yes.
year, because we're kind of doing it, you might selfishly be doing it because we're painters or sculptors, but without you guys, it really doesn't mean anything. So, and I've made so many friends, not just with the artists, but with my clientele, and so we appreciate you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said. We're art lovers and artists connect.
That's what we're
All about.
So, again, without
Without any of you, none of this would matter. So we're so grateful to everyone who's made it out in person this year, and to those people who've been joining us online. And we love sharing with you guys, and we will continue throughout the off season having monthly art discoveries via Zoom and our Facebook Live. So if you haven't already joined our email list on our website, you just go to the website and join email list, and you'll get notifications, or follow us on Facebook to see those promotions. We were very gratified over the last, during COVID, so many people were at home alone, and we did our series, I think we started in April, May, June, July. So we did a monthly art discovery, and it was just a really joyful way for us to connect. And then we've had many of our friends and followers that watch from Minnesota or right here in Arizona or wherever, and they let us know how much they appreciated that. Like, they cleared their Friday afternoon for art discovery. So we do hope that these bring some joy to you as well. And thank you for being here. And we have another question.
Well, I just want to say thank you, everyone here, and I just want to share with you that my son, we took him to Barrett Jackson earlier this week, and then when he found out we were coming here, he wasn't exactly thrilled about it. But after walking around for a little bit, he said, I can see why you really love this. It's because they create these things, and it's not just mass produced. And so I just want to thank you for opening his eyes. Yeah.
Yay, thank you. That is what we're all about right there. So sharing that joy and that aha moment. Cars are pretty cool too, but to watch this happen at the elbow of an artist is great. And we love inspiring the next generation of artists. So ladies, thank you so much. Please visit their studios. Left Duke is straight down the aisle here, and right around the corner is Marie, and Barbara Rudolph is on the south tent, about a third of the way down on the outside wall. Yes.
Are you going to be back to this site next year?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. We will be here. And you better be here or be square. So, yeah. So we look forward to, yeah. It'll be here before we know it. So thank you all so much. Enjoy your afternoon. We're open until 7, so take your time.